Hello students, welcome back to my class. Today we are going to make a new beginning of the new semester, that is the semester number 4. The fourth semester, today we are going to discuss one of the poems, the poem of Robert Browning, Love Among the Ruins. As you know, Robert Browning was a Victorian poet. He was a poet laureate after Tennyson, and Browning was quite different from Tennyson and his other contemporaries by espousing the cause of love, or bringing the element of passion and emotion back to poetry in a period when the emphasis was more on morality and the conflict between science and religion. So, Robert Browning, along with his wife Elizabeth Barrett Browning, were responsible for championing the cause of human passion, human emotion. Among his matured among his matured poems, we find the volume of Men and Women, which was initially published in 2 volumes in 1855, and this particular poem is the very first poem of the first volume. If we look at Browning's poetry and Browning as a poet, we find that Browning's conviction is that passionate intensity of romantic love is incompatible with conventionalized social morality, and thus he glorifies love over social morality. He advocates intuition over rational knowledge, and thus took over anti-intellectualism of the Romantics and pushed it towards pure primitivism. In his poetry, we find the celebration of a myriad forms of love and presentation of them in a most dramatic manner through his dramatic monologue. As we know that during this period, Tennyson, Browning, and on the other parts, Dante and others initiated the dramatic monologue, which brings within the speaker character, various thoughts, feelings, associations, and reveals them before the reader. So, in Browning's poetry, we find that his protagonists experience life intuitively, as they possess a phenomenal capacity for passionate emotion combined with a childlike reliance on instinct. Like Tennyson's visionaries, their moment of recognition come in the mysterious and unpredictable ways. He celebrates man's physical nature, unlike Victorian reticence in these matters. So, Browning's poetry is a celebration of life, is a celebration of human instinct over social morality or conventional appropriateness. And among his protagonists, we find a great range of characters, and they make the readers very much animated in their thoughts, their imaginations, their feelings, so on and so forth. So, coming back to this poem, Love Among the Ruins, it is a poem of 7 stanzas, and each of the stanzas are consisting of the couplet forms with A, B, B, C, D format. And here we find that every stanza is also having a contrast. The first part of the first stanza is describing about a pastoral scenario and its serenity, amidst which the protagonist is watching, and the protagonist is not revealed properly, but the description is bringing in Browning's descriptive power, which is, according to the historian Edward Albert, is in the form of an accumulated style. He accumulates so many objects that they gel into a singular scenario where we find the magic quality of being surprised, of being overwhelmed on the part of the reader. So, the poem begins with, where the quiet colored end of evening smiles, miles and miles, on the solitary pastures where our sheep half asleep twinkle homeward through the twilight, stray or stop as they come. So, this is just like a pastoral scenario where a lonely shepherd is taking control of his sheep and the herd of the sheep, and in spite of his control, the sheep are finding, breaking away from the discipline, breaking away from the line for the cropping, and they are returning home half asleep. It is a very pleasant and a sort of docile presentation of the scenic beauty. But in the next part, it is a contrast. Immediately, the poet, the narrator, is bringing about another scenario which is there in his mind, in his visualization. Was the site once a city great and gay? So they say. Of our century's very capital, its prince ages since held his court in gathered councils, wielding for peace or war. There, the character or the protagonist is able to visualize beneath this serenity of the grassland, of the pasture, the history of this place, a very prosperous and powerful city-state whose prince was declaring war or peace by his whims, and it was the capital of that kingdom for centuries. Now the country doesn't even boast a tree, as you see, to distinguish slopes of verdure, certain rills from the hills intersect and give a name to, else they run into one. And again in the next stanza, similarly, the first part is dedicated to the present. Here in the poem, there are so many contrasts, the present with the past, the pastoral beauty with the glittering splendor of the past, the rural landscape with that of the city. So here he is telling that it is hardly boasting of a tree. Not a tree is there. The distinguished slopes of verdure, certain reels from the hills, intersect and give a name to. If it is completely a sheet of grass, it is completely a cover of greenery, only being distinguished from one valley to another by the rills or the streams of water or the verdures, where the domed and daring palace shot its spires up like fires over the 100-gated circuit of a wall bounding all. Made of marble, men might march nor be pressed 12 abreast. But this simple, uninterrupted greenery, which is occasionally interrupted by any rills or streams of water, was once upon a very glorious city capital, which was boasting of 100-gated wall. It was a world city boasting of 100 gates, and the marble walls and the walls were so broad that 12 people can march on it abreast. And it was also having its spires up like fires. There are so many spires, so many domes. It was a place of daring and pride. And such plenty and perfection, sea of grass never was. Such a carpet as this summer time overspreads and embeds every vestige of the city, guessed alone, stock or stone. In the third stanza, the narrator is elaborating about the greenery, about the pasture land, and he is telling such plenty and perfection. The grasses have grown in such a manner, joining the whole surface of the place, as if it is in a perfection and plenty of grass never was. He had never come across such a place of greenery in his life. Such a carpet as this summertime overspreads and embeds, and in the summertime the grasses are overspreading and embedding, joining with each other, making it a very rich color and texture of the greenery, of the nature. Every vestige of the city guessed alone, stock or stone, where a multitude of men breathed joy and woe long ago. And if he is able to see the city of the past, the city of the history, he is telling that only we can guess where was which part of the city. Every vestige of the city guessed alone, stock or stone, where a multitude of men breathed joy and woe long ago, long time ago. A group of people who were the inhabitants of the city, the king and his men, they were breathing, they were living with their joy, with their celebrations. Lust of glory pricked their hearts up, dread of shame struck them tame. And these people of the history, these people of the king, they were having the glory of lust, and they were inspired by the glory of war, the glory of violence, to conquer different lands and to bring their wealth back to their city, to make it more prosperous. Dread of shame struck their tame, and sometimes even they were defeated. If they were elated and excited by their own victories, they were also feeling ashamed by their defeats. struck them tame, and they were experiencing these reverses of their fate, reverses of their actions with equal intensity. And that glory and that shame alike, the gold bought and sold. And their glory, their victory in the war, but the gold. And their country was becoming prosperous. They were buying the gold, or in their defeat, they have to sell out the gold for making the truce. Now the single little turret that remains on the plains by the capper overrooted by the gaudy overcoat, while the patching house licks head of blossom wings through the chinks. In the fourth stanza, the narrator is bringing about a more intense description of the pastoral landscape, the more vivid presentation of the pastoral grassland. So he is telling, now there is only one symbol, one sign of that past, that is a single turret, a small dome on the top of a larger dome. That was only the turret is visible anyhow, and by the capper overrooted by the gaudy overcoat, and on that turret also there are the creepers, the gaudy or the capper. They have sprayed their leaves, they have moved around the turret, they have covered it with their own leaves. So the turret is also no more the glorious golden, but old, ruined and green. It is a part of the greenery. While the patching house licks head of blossom wings through the chinks, and the small grass flowers, the house licks, their blossoms, they are winking as if they are looking from the dense greenery of the leaves and the grasses to the outer world. Mark the basement whence a tower in ancient time sprang sublime, and a burning ring all round, the chariots traced as they raced, and the monarch and his minions and his dames viewed the games. But in this very place where this old ruined turret is visible, there the narrator is imagining that in that place there was the basement whence a tower in ancient times sprang sublime. There was a very tall tower which was springing up to the sky in its sublimity, as if it was challenging the sky. And a burning ring all around, the chariot traced as they raced, and in front of this turret, in front of this dome, there was the game being arranged in peacetime, when the people or the soldiers of the king, they were racing and they were entering into a burning ring. They are carrying their chariots through the burning ring to show their daredevil expertise in war games. And the monarch and his minions and his dames viewed the games, and sitting on this turret, on this very turret which is now ruined and covered by the gaudy and the capper, the king, his ministers and his queens, they were sitting there and enjoying these war games of their people. And I know, while thus the quiet colored eve smiles to live, to their folding all our many twinkling fleece in such peace. And the slopes and rills in undistinguished grey melt away. But in the present, the narrator is being mesmerized by the scenario when the sun is setting, and in that melting light of the setting sun, he finds it a magical place. I know while the quiet colored Eve smiles to live. The quiet colored, brilliant use of imagery on the part of Browning to describe, as if it is like a painting. The evening is smiling to live, and it has colored the whole sky and the whole landscape. To their folding all our many twinkling fleece in such peace. And all these herd of ships on whose necks there are the bells, and these bells are tinkling and making a melodious sound which is in tune with this evening scenario, which is so magical, so beautiful. They are retiring in peace, and the slopes and rills in undistinguished grey melt away. And as the light is gradually fading away, the rills of water and the slopes of the valleys, they are gradually melting away and becoming undistinguished. They are gradually being enveloped by the coming darkness. That a girl with eager eyes and yellow hair waits me there in the turret whence the charioteer caught soul for the goal. When the king looked where she looks now, breathless, dumb, till I come. But in this magical atmosphere, in that same turret, now he is finding a girl. He is visualizing from the distance a girl is waiting with eager eyes and yellow hair. Here, the eager eyes is expressing the passionate love on the part of the girl for this narrator, the lover. And the yellow hair symbolizes great desire. Waits me there in the turret whence the charioteer caught soul for the goal. She is waiting in the same turret where once upon a time the king and his people were sitting. The majestic royal people were sitting. There is standing my beloved, waiting for me, where the charioteers were trying to catch the soul for the goal, where the charioteers were making the race to catch the prized object. When the king looked where she looks now, breathless, dumb, till I come. And from where the king was looking at the charioteers and their game, she is looking from there, but towards me and my herd of sheep, as if I am also the charioteer, as if I am that great powerful militia of the king who is controlling so many ships. So here Browning is making a contrast between the past and the present, the past glory and the present simplicity, the past power with the present love, because the shepherd is controlling this herd of sheep by his love, not by any military power. But he looked upon the city every side, far and wide, all the mountains topped with temples, all the glades, colonnades, all the causeways, bridges, aqueducts, and then all the men. But then the narrator is describing what was the perception of the king, what the king was looking at. The king was looking upon the whole city, every side, far and wide. Here, we can make a comparison with the poem Ozymandias of Egypt, where Ozymandias was looking at his own creations and challenging the god. O mighty, ye mighty, you have created this desert, but I have created this city which is tall enough to challenge the sky. Similarly, here Browning is introducing that concept of pomp and power on the part of the king. The king was looking around, getting the satisfaction that he has built such a marvelous city. On every side, far and wide, all the mountains topped with temples. On every mountain he had built a temple. All the glades, colonnades, all the causeways, bridges, aqueducts. So all these things he had constructed. He had constructed the ways between the valleys. He had made the bridges. He had made the colonnades, the space of columns, and all these things, and then all the men. And he is also feeling proud of being the leader of all these men who are very mighty in military power. When I do come, she will speak not, she will stand either hand. But then the narrator is contrasting that proud look of the king with the eager, anxious look of the beloved who is waiting eagerly because it is evening and her lover is yet to come. When I to come, she will speak not, she will stand either hand. When the charioteers were returning after hitting the goal, the king was excited to greet them. But here, the beloved is not speaking anything. She is very silent like a dumb. She will stand either hand, rather she will simply look at both hands of the lover, that what he has brought, whether he has brought a lamb, a newborn lamb, or he has brought any flower or anything for her. On my shoulder give her eyes the fast embrace of my face. So she will be expecting me, she will be waiting for me, but she will not be solely waiting for any gift. Rather, she will look at my shoulder, my eyes, the fast embrace of my face. She will be embracing my face to know that how was my day. If I was happy or I was feeling the pain of moving throughout the day. So she is more concerned about my feelings, my experiences throughout the day with the ships than anything in expectation. Ere we rush, ere we extinguish sight and speech, each and each. And that becomes a moment of magnificent unison. We both of us, we enter into each other simply by looking at each other's eyes. Ere we rush, ere we extinguish, we rush into each other, we extinguish within each other. Sight and speech, each and each, all our sight and speech, they melt into our souls, into our feelings, into our emotions. Emotionally, we embrace each other, we become unified, we become one. In 1 year, they sent 1,000,000 fighters forth, south and north, and they built their gods a brazen pillar high as the sky. It renewed 1,000 chariots, reserved 1,000 chariots in full force, gold of course. Again, describing about the might and prosperity of the city. The narrator is telling that in 1 year they sent 1,000,000 fighters forth south and north. It was such a powerful kingdom. It was having so many fighters with them that within a year they fought various wars simultaneously, sending millions of fighters both to the south and north. And they built their gods a brazen pillar high as the sky, and because they became victorious in the wars simultaneously, so they also built a huge pillar which is brazen, which is expressing their pride, expressing their ego. It was just like the pride and ego of Ozymandias, who is challenging the god by creating very tall palaces. So here the king was building tall pillars as a prayer to the god, but actually it is not the prayer. It is rather a showing up of his power and his prosperity. Yet reserved 1,000 chariots in full force, gold of course. In spite of fighting so many wars simultaneously, they were still having both 1,000 charioteers, sufficient military people with them to protect themselves, and gold of course, plenty of gold. So it was a huge, powerful and prosperous city which is unimaginable. O heart, O blood that freezes, blood that burns, earth's returns for whole centuries of folly, noise and sin, shut them in. But the narrator is telling, O heart, O blood that freezes, now the blood is freezing, the heart is choking. Why? Because all these things are no more. Earth returns. What we take from earth, we have to return to the earth. It is the law of nature that what we create from the earth will take it back. So, for whole centuries of folly, noise and sin, so for hundreds of years of their follies, their pride, their mistakes, their noise, their sounds, their war cries, and their sin, because they killed so many people, they looted, they plundered so many cities and villages. Shut them in, the earth shut them in. Everything had gone down the earth. Earth dominated over that glorious city created by them, with their triumphs and their glories and the rest. Love is best. So the narrator is giving a final twist to his contrast or the presentation of two different places in two different times, and he is telling with their triumphs, their victories, their glories and all other things. In comparison to that, love is best. Why? Because love recreates, love empowers, love makes life enjoined with the nature. It relates and it joins one with the other. So it is with the nature, it is with the earth. But whereas the empire, the war, the gold, the destruction, the greed, they are anti-nature and they go back into the nature. So in this way, what we find that the poem is celebrating love, and the poem in its structure is making a contrast between so many things. The poem is presenting the ruined and enchanted city of a prosperous empire, but it also illustrates how everything in the universe come to an end and become a part of the history. But love is beyond destruction. So Browning has employed an unusual structure of rhyming couplets in which long trochaic lines are paired with short lines of 3 syllables. This dramatizes the theme of the poem, a comparison between love and material glory and between pastoral life and palatial grandeur. So, there are so many comparisons: the imperialism versus individual freedom, the lively splendor versus simplicity and docility, prosperous empire, the great city versus pastoral beauty in the landscape, gold versus grass, green, war versus love, passionate royal pleasure of games versus emotional pleasure of true love, sound versus silence, and excitable complication versus contemplative serenity. So, this is the poem, and from this poem, questions can be asked regarding what is a monologue and how Browning has employed the dramatic monologue to animate the comparison between love and war. Or the question can be asked about the narrator and his perception of the past and present. And explanations also can be asked about the first 4 lines of the poem, or maybe the last 2 lines of the poem. I hope you will be able to do justice to it. Thank you.